Kindly mute all the mics and just myself and Professor RV's thing and keep it open. You can live stream, please. Yeah, thank you. Namaste. A warm welcome to all of you on this evening's program. Friends, we have Pragya Bharati, as you all know. We are now started a weekly program in English, and then of course our Karimnagar team is doing it quite regularly, other programs in Telugu as well. And so this week, we have the program of Professor R. Vaidyanathan Ji today. We warmly welcome each one of you to today's program, and I will speak about our organization briefly. I'm sure most of you are already aware of it, but Pragya Bharati is an intellectual thinkers forum, which was founded almost 30 years back. And the 5 initial founding members included Dr. T. Hanuman Chaudhary Ji. He was a former advisor to the government of Andhra Pradesh and IT, former chairman of VSNL, and is a Padma Shri awardee, and a 90-year youngest intellectual in our group. He was supported by Shri Ram Madhav Ji. Ram Madhav Ji literally founded Pragya Bharati team single-handedly. He was the one who was the driving force behind bringing the organization to where it is. And in fact, Nirmala Sitharaman Ji was one of the initial general secretaries of Pragya Bharati. Besides Ram Madhav Ji, we had Vakati Panduranga Rao Garu and Shri Harihar Sharma Garu. Both of them are no more with us. They were also the initial founding members. And then we had Shri B.S. Sharma Ji, pharmaceutical professional. These are the 5 people who founded it. And in the last almost close to 30 years, we have conducted many seminars, conferences, and since the corona has affected us, we have been conducting webinars online. And some of the most notable things before this were like Telangana Vaibhavam, then we had Jnana Sangam, agricultural seminar. So many we had conducted in the past few years. Many important dignitaries like Vajpayee Ji, Advani Ji, and so many people graced our platform in the long years that went by. We also award what we call as Pragya Puraskar annually. The last awardee was Dr. Satish Reddy, who is the advisor to the Government of India on scientific issues. Then we also run a magazine by name Bharatiya Pragya. It's a monthly English magazine, but of course it's on a private circulation. It is not available on newsstands. We also focus on developing the Bharatiya way of looking at it, or a nationalistic perspective among intellectuals. We provide content to nationalists who are otherwise not knowing the intellectual content. So we provide, we are in the fields of both ways in terms of bringing intellectuals to the mainstream, nationalistic mainstream, as well as providing content to nationalists. Friends, this is precisely what we do as an organization. Kindly do subscribe and support to our social media assets, our Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube channels. Kindly do subscribe to us. Even this video of Professor R. Vaidyanathan Ji would be uploaded into our YouTube after the talk has been recorded. Friends, it gives me great pleasure in inviting Professor R. Vaidyanathan Ji, who is a retired professor of finance from IIM Bangalore. He obtained his doctorate from the Indian Institute of Management, Kolkata, where he was also a faculty member for some years. He has been 2 times Fulbright Scholar and a fellow of ICSSR, visiting faculty at various universities in USA, UK, and he's been selected by Business Today as one of the best professors at all IIMs. He has the rare privilege of being in various committees of regulators like SEBI, RBI, IRDA, and so many things. He's been part of the policy making at Delhi and the rest of the parts of Bharat. His book, India Unique, Role of Non-Corporate Sectors in India, and of course, his other book on caste are widely read and really critically acclaimed books. He actually brings out how caste is a unifying and a multiplier force in economy, while it is a divisive force in politics. His in-depth understanding of Bharatiya economy and its civilizational roots is just amazing. He is currently, chair professor of Cho Ramaswamy Public Policy at Shastra University, Tanjore, and emeritus adjunct professor of Rashtriya Raksha University. Friends, of course, he is very popular, as you all know, in several TV debates, especially in P Gurus and other channels Sri IRG hosts. He not just brings out the quality content in any subject that has been given to him, but he has a very unique style of being witty, sarcastic. If you have not focused attention on what he's talking, probably you missed a critical point. So Professor R. Vaidyanathan is just a great Bharatiya intellect that we are all proud of to have on today's seminar, today's talk. So Professor Vaidyanathan ji, welcome to Pragya Bharati program, and the floor is yours, sir. Today he is going to talk not on economics, but on a topic which is very, very different. Actually, judicial reforms are something which are dragging our economy. Nobody understands that. Our judicial reforms actually are so badly needed that people claim that if judiciary had done it properly, probably we would have had at least 1% additional growth in this country. We will hear this from Professor Vaidyanathan ji shortly. Be it appointment of judges, accountability of judges, lack of any time limitations on the cases, judicial overreach in trying to take over administrative issues, and then challenges with regard to law of evidence, and of course much beyond. Professor Vaidyanathan ji, the floor is yours.
So thank you to Pragya Bharati, and thank you Mamadi ji for providing this opportunity, and I express my sincere thanks to all the participants who on a Saturday evening could take time off to come and listen about this issue. I'm very delighted about it. And if I recall correctly, Mamadi ji was telling, this is the second time I am interacting with Pragya Bharati participants. But today we will just look at the issues pertaining to the judicial part of the story. And it's a very important thing actually, and which is not adequately focused. Everybody talks about so many other things because it is assumed that whatever judiciary does is the best thing or the last thing. So being a statistical background, I'll give you some numbers to start with. As of now, as per the National Judicial Data Grid, as of 2021, Supreme Court has got a number of cases is 68,000. 68,000, and all the high courts in the country, 58 lakhs cases are pending. District courts, if you take, then it is 3.8 crore are pending. So the numbers are mind-boggling. Obviously, don't divide it by the total population and say per capita cases are very small or anything, because not all the what one can call 130 crore people are involved with the judicial process. And another dimension of it is also equally important, which I took a lot of pain to collect it. More than 30 years in High Court, 91,000 cases are pending. More than 30 years. Of course, we believe in rebirth, so there is a issue in terms of, if not this year, this time, next time, and other thing. The accused can become the judge can become the witness can become the lawyer can become the culprit. Anyhow, and in district courts, 102,000 cases are pending for the last something like more than 30 years. So High Court and District Court, if you add together, 194,000 cases are pending. And 20 to 30 years, we have 151,000 in High Court and 491 in District Courts. So it comes to 640,000. And 10 to 20 years, which is considered as a very, very short period, 10 point, 1,000 cases are pending in High Court and 2,737,000 are pending in District Court. That is 3.7 million in all. This is 10 to 20 years. This is the situation. And of course, in a seminar, I mentioned about the issue of justice delayed is justice denied. One of the senior judges stood up and told the professor, you should know, justice hurried is justice buried. So we have to take time in order to decide. And it's a very, I would say, to put it very simply, it's a sad state of affairs actually. You find in many of the district courts, people going from small towns and rural areas, sitting outside and waiting, and then the lawyer coming and taking vaida or what you call adjournment. And this is actually it's a and as far as India is concerned, I would definitely say the process of getting justice itself is justice actually. Some people say that this fellow has committed the crime. The committed the crime mean what? He should be taken to court. That's all. And that process will go on for 8-10 years. He will, by then, he would have understood that the crime he has committed is adequately punished. And you have to, the additional point I should mention, you have to go to the restroom of some of the High Court and District Court. That is extra punishment because you are waiting there for a period of 1 day or something. Token is given and your name may or may not be called. But if you have the inclination and the strength to visit the restroom, that is equivalent to actually giving you the life imprisonment. Now, why this is, there is a lot of this football game is going on. Government says courts are actually, the composite reform is required, which we are not going to focus today because that will take us. Composite reform is police, court, jail, and hospital, doctors. All the four are equally involved in providing you quote unquote justice. So in some way or other. So particularly the medical profession comes into being if there is a criminal type of an offense pertaining to murder or. Now the type of an argument is today the sanction strength as of 3 months before 669 positions. So that is the sanction strength, and it's sort of a never a zero vacancy position, one can say. And in 2021, approximately 411 vacancies were there. Now, that general convention, there is no law or anything. 2/3 is normally filled by practicing lawyers. That means 274 should come from the bar. And what type of a practicing lawyer? They are supposed to be outstanding lawyers, as we will come to that. So 2 times the lawyer strength, 350 outstanding lawyer, 550 outstanding lawyers have to be considered. This is a very interesting thing. And for some reason, that NGAC, you may be knowing about it, and where the government wanted to also have a say, it was struck down by the judiciary. They told the independence of the judiciary is getting harmed by this. So in a sense, today, the judiciary is a swayambhu. It is born out of itself and it lives out of itself. It never dies out of itself. That is the most important thing. So it's a swayambhu. I think some of the people who have been to traditional temples will know what is meant by a swayambhu. So it is a very difficult to, so that is a type of issue. Just to 1 second.
That was really classic on his part. Swayambhu is a classic statement that you made.
What you may loosely call issue is that what are known as outstanding lawyers. Many of them are not very enthusiastic in getting into the bench today. That many of the judges themselves agree. Of course, the outstanding lawyers can talk in terms of a couple of lakhs, sometimes crore even, in terms of appearances and other things. So that is another thing. And those who are not outstanding, those who are standing out of the court, they cannot be made into judges just because there is a vacancy. There is a major amount of what one can call problem, and it is always suggested that they neither have a sword nor the purse. That is what they claim, the judges. So they are not able to. Recently, one of the retired judges in US was telling that the public looks at judges as politicians in robes. It's continue to rule of law itself diminishes, and its ability to act on other branches is very less. First and foremost is not having adequate amount. Second is the issue of transparency. There is a memorandum of procedure, and it says the Chief Justice of High Court should send a proposal to the Chief Minister, and to avoid delay, he also sends it to the Governor. And why don't we make it transparent? Because once he sends the name, large amount of discussion takes place. Everybody knows about it, but not in public. It's more in terms of, so many of this caste. Caste plays a very major role nowadays. Let's be very blunt about it. It's not something which is top secret or anything. So many are not adequately represented. Another thing, Chief Minister is trying to be much better to be disclose the names of the candidates. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and this many a time the judges of the court itself has told, and retired judges. And actually, I should add here one interesting thing. Retired judges are much more having wisdom. I call it, they are all war veterans. War veteran mean wisdom after retirement. WAR. So they are after retirement. I find, of course, not only judges, even the government bureaucrats and all. We would have been education secretary for 20 years, but after retirement, he will suggest so many things which should be changed in the department and in the. So, same way, many of the senior judges are got this approach. Second is, many a time what happens in the absence of adequate amount of transparency and ability to take action, some of the state judges are sent to smaller states or territories, like your Sikkim, Tripura, Meghalaya. And this is not a good thing, actually. This looks like a punishment posting, And one gentleman from Meghalaya told, I never knew, I don't know when we will have a judge from our own state. In the sense, all these judges who are perceived to have been not clean in dealing in their bigger states are all sent to these the smaller locations and other things, which is also not a very. And 2 or 3 cases I just thought I will mention. One is very famous. These are Vishnu Tiwari case. He was in jail for 20 years. He was not held guilty after appeal made after 16 years, but somehow he was never released. There was a defective application or something, and then he was told that you are not at all guilty. He never knew why is he inside for 20 years, and 6 men were held not guilty in Rajasthan High Court in a blast case after 23 years. They were all put inside jail for 23 years. They were told by the cops, you did some blast. And they told, we have never heard about any blast or anything. They were inside. And one Nepali citizen, he was released from Dum Dum Central Jail. Believe me, after 40 years. He was under trial prisoner for 40 years. And he has been involved in some theft case in as early as 1980. And now the story goes that he was not very enthusiastic in getting released after 40 years. He has got used to the system, and he has been doing a lot of work in the jail, and he has been assisting people. So this is and the case of Premchand is something which should be go in golden letter. In 1982, a sample of turmeric was collected. He's a small retailer, and 4 worms were found in it, according to the prosecution. He was acquitted in 1995 after 13 years. But again, the case was taken up in the SC, and 14 years later, again he was punished. And then 11 years later, he was again acquitted by SC. So 38 years he has been between the court, jail, and outside for 4 worms in his small basket of turmeric. Right. So it's not involved in a lawsuit. Itself is a punishment. I can assure you on that. My grandpa used to say 3 things. Never argue with a government servant. This is very, very important. You will never win. And ultimately, you will have to do what he is telling. Never tell him that you will go to superior, another thing, because his superior also can't do anything about it. So never argue with a government servant. Second, never go to a Thana. That is another thing. I fortunately didn't have the occasion to go to Thana. Long time before, once I went there for some passport verification. The third thing is never go to a court. This is something which is very interesting. When small minor accident take place, another thing. Nowadays, people don't say, I will take you to court, another. They just want to settle it, how much amount I have to give. So this is L.N. Mishra. Some of you might not have even remembering him. He was a very powerful leader of Bihar. He was a minister. 1975, he was killed in a blast. 1975. And the accused people were told that you are all guilty in 2014, 40 years later. And there are some cases which are going on, like for instance Salman Khan. That's a very popular case, and it is going for so many years now, 2025. And he seems to have driven a vehicle, and some people who were sleeping on the platform died. And finally, it seems that that vehicle was driven without any driver. The driverless vehicle was found out not by your Tesla and all these fellows in US and in India itself. And similarly, one deer he hunted, and that deer died. And that was also told that deer actually committed suicide, that took a pistol and killed itself. So this is something very fascinating, actually. We are far, far ahead in terms of. So other issue which is of concern to many people is increasingly the judiciary is perceived to get into territories which doesn't belong to them. They are taking the task of executives and other, and also getting into what you may loosely call TRP based cases, or what you may call that. For instance, can you believe, sir, the height of Dahi Handi was decided by the Supreme Court. How much it, and finally they all came to a conclusion 20 feet height only. Dahi Handi in Lower Parel in Bombay. Now, elementary question is, does Supreme Court or any High Court, do they have any instrumentality to implement any of these things? Like one fellow in Kottayam, I remember quite a number of years before, he banned mosquitoes. I do not understand at all. You mean all the mosquitoes will become will be taken to contempt of court or what? Finally, the mosquitoes have to be killed by the municipal employee with a with some sort of a pump type of thing with a disinfectant in his back and then going around. So height of Dahi Handi is something which is highly, and they spent a lot of time on that. There are crying need of cases waiting, actually. For instance, 7 states in India have got Hindus as minorities. There is a huge amount of debate and request that these 7 states should be clearly mentioned as Hindu minority state. They should get the benefit of being minorities. Like, you can't, for instance, there were 4 fellows roaming around in Kashmir Valley, 4 Hindus, but they were told you are majority. You cannot have any benefits and other. So this whole country being taken in terms of this configuration, it's a case, very serious one. There is another case which is Tamil Nadu is having 69% reservation, 69% of any educational, and you know how many people were declared as backward. 90% of the people are declared as backward. And then this creamy layer came, another thing. Many states told we don't have creamy layer. Some states told even our governor is not a creamy layer. So something very, very interesting actually. I normally thought this local milk supply doesn't never give creamy layer. That's a very standard thing. But this also was told, and courts have nodded their head. And this case of states like Tamil Nadu, it has been put into Schedule 9, which is not questionable in court. This is something crying need. What I want to say is there are so many major things are pending actually. This is something which the court, I think in its wisdom, should take cognizance of. Sometimes they, they seem to prefer what are known as this PIL, what are called public interest litigation. It is more publicity interest, nothing to do with the public interest. There is one ML Sharma in Supreme Court. He is very well known actually. Immediately he will go and file a public interest litigation within a day or two. And large number of NGOs are floating around in Delhi. And if you are a foreign funded NGO, your chances of getting heard is very high on so many topics and issues. For instance, one person sent an email letter to the Supreme Court telling that the gold ornaments in this temple at Trivandrum is not being properly maintained, and whatever the reason. Immediately Supreme Court jumped into that, appointed as amicus curiae, and then told the lockers should all be opened. This is something very crazy actually. Two of them are opened. The third one has not been opened even today. What is the big deal about it? The local Tana, local type of trustees, they should take cognizance of it. There is no need for Supreme Court to be worried about. And immediately a large number of these communist and various assorted type of political leaders told all that gold should be taken out and used for laying roads, and contractors should make money out of that. 400 years before, people have given gold to temple, not to lay roads in 2021. It is meant for the god and it is supposed to be used for the god. Anyhow, the other one is very well known now. 4 or 5 girls in Delhi who have never been to Kerala, who never understood what is this Sabarimala, they filed a case that we should also enter into Sabarimala. And the court took it in all its majestic thing, and then declared that anyone can. And none of the judges have ever visited that place. Nobody knows what exactly is the situation there. But this was passed. Not even 50 Hindu women walked on the road demanding that we should enter into that temple. Actually, after the judgment came, there were thousands and thousands on the road telling, we don't want to go into that. There is only one single location. There are so many reasons for it and other things. And there are also temples where men are not allowed. That's a separate issue. My point is, I do not know why they are so enthusiastic in getting into these type of cases. And there are constitutional crises facing the whole situation. And, this is something which, why did they, say that NGAC, political interference, and that is something which they were very clear about. But we had V.R. Krishna Iyer who was a minister in communist government of EMS Namadribad. He was the Supreme Court judge. Nobody raised any, little finger at that point of time. We had one Chandru, who was a CPM member, who became a High Court judge in Chennai. So there is, when it comes to political leaning, one type of political leaning is acceptable, not other type of leaning is something which is bizarre actually. And even NGAC told we will have a committee of people, 3 people, which Chief Justice will be there definitely, and 2 appointees of the Prime Minister and Prime Minister himself and leader of opposition, and there is and then the Law Minister. The presence of Law Minister was a bugbear for them. And then it was told that 2 representatives will have a term of 3 years, non-extendable. And if the Supreme Court SC Chief Justice say that this name is not acceptable, then they won't be inducted. All that was mentioned, but somehow they were. But what is the final net result? You will find it. I was looking at some of the thing. Everybody talks about dynasty and other thing. I have also been telling that 20 families are controlling the entire political parties in the country. Sheikh Abdullah at Jammu and Kashmir to Karunanidhi at exactly 20 families. You can call them F20. They are the ones who are controlling. But when I looked at the uh, data on justices, it's very interesting. 7 chief justices of High Court are sons or son-in-law or nephew of former chief justices or judges of SC or HC. 7 of them. And 9 chief justices are juniors and relatives of other judges, union ministers, or other SC judges. 4 chief justices are related to Advocate General, Attorney General. Only 5 are not related, not known, because in India there are a lot of complications. You could be related, but you don't want to reveal it and other. So this is something. And one Rajya Sabha member of DMK openly told these 5 judges are all the arms given by Karunanidhi. That is their pichai, he told in Tamil. What it means is it's a sort of a donation given and they should know about it, and no action has been initiated against him or anything. So this is something very, so the large portion of judges being related to ex-judges and I, lightheartedly somebody told you look at any of the judges or lawyers, very well-known lawyers, and they are sitting behind them. There are something like 200 books, all red-colored law books and other things. Whom they will hand it over? They have to hand it over to their children only. Who else is going to read it, or who else is going to look at it? That type of a. Recently, one another interesting thing has come. Large number of lower level courts are not even reading the judgment of the Supreme Court. This is something, reading habit has gone. I thought only my students it is gone, but it appears it has gone to the various higher levels also. The writing habit is very poor among judges. They dictate and somebody takes it in the computer and other thing. Except some of the what you may loosely call bombastic judges who still use all this Latin and Greek to threaten people. Mutatis mutandis and ceteris paribus. Very rarely judges use any of our Sanskrit literature or Sanskrit knowledge or background or anything. Very few lawyers. Only one judge I remember, Kajju of those days. He used in the judgment on the Mitakshara and the Dayabaga school debate and other thing. Otherwise, no judges. So these many of the junior judges, junior I mean HC and lower court, they are not even finding what has already been settled matter in the courts of senior people. So there is a huge amount of issues which they should seriously consider, and they have to, what I would rather call self-regulation is the best regulation. That's what they say. But in India, unfortunately, self comes before regulation. This is the major problem. So every body, whether it is a financial body, whether it is a regulatory body, whether it is accountant body, whether it is legal body, all of them say self-regulation. That means self will be primary. That's not the issue. Issue is in terms of transparency. Issue in terms of knowing the Lakshman Rekha, where it should stop, where it should. For instance, there was one study which was done in California, which is sort of it's not identical. This one of the retired Supreme Court Judge Lokur was mentioning 1,700 judges and 4.1 million, they decided the cases. And in UP, Bihar and Telangana put together, there are 4,000 judges and 3.5 million cases are decided. This was in 2019. Now, of course, one doesn't know how many of those cases decided by the Californian judges were frivolous or simple. But so the first and fundamental thing which I think the judiciary should do is look at the composition or frequency distribution of the cases. I am told roughly 40 to 50% of the cases are government related cases, and another 30% at least are what are called frivolous, or rather not very serious type of cases. So what should be done? We have huge number of these law schools all over the country, and those students can be given projects to find in their own respective district and sessions code how many of them are pending, and how many of them are serious, how many of them are adjustment based. So adjustment is something which has to be frowned upon, and speedy and swift. This is the code word for judicial processes all over Europe. Speedy and swift. That means you must swift and severe. That's the second dimension of the issue. You must do it fast, and also the punishment should be very severe, so that the person who has committed the crime is set as an example to others. But unfortunately, we have become very lax in terms of this side of the picture also. So the classification of the cases can be done. And last but not least is some amount of accountability should be there for judiciary. One cannot say that we are not accountable to anyone. That's not a very desirable thing. And there is no performance appraisal. I don't think anybody has appraised High Court and Supreme Court. If I talk in terms of appraising them, then I will be told contempt of court and other. How can you? But everybody is appraised these days. Even gods are appraised. So there is no need for any. So I think they must recognize that accountability is equally important for any type of institutions. That is something which extremely critical and extremely important. And it is not very easy to look at the current picture. For instance, post-independence time, if you look at almost all our political leaders were lawyers actually, who fought for independence, starting with Gandhi, Nehruji, Rajaji, Patel, name one, they were all lawyers. They were all entered into the political field. And today, I do not know how many of our law students will be capable of that type of a leadership and other thing. Sometime when I go to law colleges and other, I am getting worried actually, whether I have entered into law colleges with a student, or whether I have entered into some other most difficult places. So this is something. Now the government says we will bring the retired judges. I think that's not a solution to the existing problem or anything. And many of the law colleges, some of the premier colleges, where of course students are Marxist oriented and other thing. But when it comes to placement, they all want to join multinational corporations as legal consultants and other things. Not many are even interested in doing the what you may loosely call the wearing the black gowns and then coming into the court. Of course, Arun Jaitley, if I recall, once humorously told, it is extremely difficult to pass the chartered accounting exam. In those days, people used to say Jesus never failed. Somebody told he never wrote a CA exam. That's the main reason. So, and he also mentioned, Arun Jaitley, that it is very difficult to fail an LLB exam. This is something which we should keep in the back of the mind. So are the cream de la cream, are they going into legal profession is a concern for future. Most of the best and brightest, they all go for engineering, they all go for computer science, they all go. I think it is a serious issue with the Supreme Court judges and the collegium and other things should contemplate how to attract very good type of a material, because after 15-20 years, these people will become the judges and other things. So the time taken is one dimension of the issue only, and larger dimension of the issue is in terms of we have settled actually. I will give you a very interesting thing. We are the global leader in terms of creating record. Guinness Book of Record. Normally, we don't go into Guinness and other thing, except for the person with the longest beard or one who ate idli in 30 minutes. He ate some 50 idlis. Or normally, Guinness Book of Record is not our cup of tea. But one area, the longest case in the human history is where our. This is most important. On 28th April 1966, on Bala Sahib Thorat case was decided out of court in Pune, and its case started in 1205. It went through the Mughal period, it went through the French period, it went through the British period, it went through another. It is regarding who should have a first preference in terms of religious festivals among the different groups and other things. So the longest case is many of my foreign colleagues say, how do you manage your, I tell them really, you see, our society is run on fear of God and not fear of law. Your society is run on fear of law because most of you have become atheist. Many of them don't even go to church. But ours is run on fear of God. And that's a fundamental thing. And slowly, if this fear of God is also removed, we will become chaotic. The society is organized in India. The government is disorganized. Let's be very clear about it. And in the other countries, government is organized, society is disorganized. So the fear of God is the one which makes the thing go. Otherwise, with the given COVID situation and the job losses and other things, so many buses should have been burnt in this country, which is happening in Latin American countries and other, not here. Because people on an average are extraordinarily fearful of God, believe in the theory of karma, and that is what sustains. And let not the judicial system think that it is due to them. It is no, it's not due to the judicial system. Only one thing is I want to mention before I close: the delay, how much it can create confusion. So judge was questioning this man who is 70-year-old. You are 70-year-old. I am seeing that. Why did you try to kiss that girl? If you were 20, I could have understood that, hormones and impulses and other things. But at your age, are you not ashamed to do this? This man politely replied, sir, only when I was 20 years, I did that. But the case has come only today with you. When I am 70, what do I do about it? I did the act only when I was 20. That is the type of thing. So it's not justice delayed is justice hurried is justice buried. No. So we have to re-establish the rule of law. It's the rule of God today is being established. And most of the people who have, who go to court and who go to, they just visit courts and then come back and then. So simple thing they can do, put limit on adjournments. No case can be adjourned. And particularly criminal cases should be decided much faster. 2014 case of the Sunanda Pushkar, everybody knows about it. The fabulous, fantabulous actually, English language master, Shashi Tharoor's wife. And she is, that case is going on still. And Delhi police say that it is murder. And one thing I'm happy, the judges, the police, the television channel experts, everybody has agreed that Sunanda has died. So on that there is a consensus. So because in India, very difficult to evolve consensus on many of these things, people, but that is now more or less settled. 2014. Now we are in 2021. And the gentleman is the chairman of the Information Technology Parliamentary Panel. That's the most fascinating thing actually. We can put A. Raja as the ethics panel chairman. I can suggest many type of roles for different type of people. Anyhow, so simple thing is, are we giving swift and severe type of a judgment? One. Second is, can adjournments be minimized? At least in criminal cases can be settled in 2 to 3 years. Forget about anything but 20, 25 years, another thing. And why not have the transparency, which you demand from everybody else? And why get into areas which definitely doesn't belong to you? Recently, you might be seeing many of the Supreme Court judges are debating about whether the 12th class student should get 40% of the midterm or 10th class students. I don't know how many judges have grandchildren who are having this problem anyhow. And some of them may not even know that many of the students are, 10th fail, 12th pass, 8th fail, 9th pass, all sorts of complications. I do not understand for a minute why the judiciary should be involved in this at all. It's not their cup of tea. Who should make? I'm very worried whether they will decide to set question papers and then also tell our lawyers will correct all the papers of all the students. No, I hope we don't get into such a. It is what I call. Some people call it in terms of judicial overreach, but they will say it is constitutional morality. So it's a major type of a thing. And longer you talk about judiciary, the greater the chances that they may send a summons for you. And of course, many of the judges believe that jail is not the law. Bail is the law today. So many people who should be given anticipatory jail are given bail. I cannot understand this logic also. Anyhow, so they should make bail not as a permanent law. There are so many people floating around who have come out on bail. Everybody is floating around. Almost, one shouldn't say this. It's a politically loaded statement, but from the president of the Congress party to the local level leaders are all on bail under some class or act or something like that. So this is reforms of judiciary should be number one on our agenda, whether judiciary likes it or not. I think it should be. If they don't like it, it should be thrust on them. There is nothing wrong about it or anything. And second is transparency. Third is timeliness. Most important. All of us believe in rebirth, but that doesn't automatically mean that we can wait. Adjourned, he says, for 10 days once. So I asked my friend, is it 10 human days or 10 Brahma days? That is some, you should have asked him, because many people may not know Brahma days are different than human days. So the logic that next birth, the accused can become the judge can become the lawyer can become the witness can become the accused. That I think we should give up that logic. We should go by linear, one lifespan basis. Otherwise, otherwise, why go to the court at all? Karma will take care of any of the, what do you call, you have different type of karmas. People know about it, and the prarabdha karma, and so all that which will. So the last most important point I would like to stress among educated people. Many of the cases, it is the judiciary which is on trial. Let's be very clear about it, because both the lawyers know what is the fact. Let's be very honest about it. So the judiciary is on, so they should be very sure that they should enhance their credibility. This is most important. And the only thing which can sustain judiciary is the credibility. It's not the amount of fee which you collect or the bombastic language in which you write your judgment. Are you a credible institution? In the sense, do people feel comfortable that if we go to court, we will get, actually what we will get is justice. This is what is the most important point. So I think I am getting a feeling that the credibility is getting eroded, which is extremely important. And that's a fundamental pillar on which they are standing. So the sooner they re-establish their credibility, the greater will be the benefit to the nation. Thank you very much. Thank you all for patiently hearing for the long version. And I thought I should mention. And in case somebody summons me or something, I will inform somebody. I will tell he is solely responsible for making me utter these words, right? Okay. Sure. I'm sure among the audience there will be some lawyers who will come to my to get a bail for me. Right? Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Thank you, Professor RV. That was really a wonderful and bit content. I mean, the way you spoke is just amazing. But yes, there are a lot of serious issues that you raised behind that. You spoke about how it is difficult or impossible to pass a CA exam, and how it is so difficult and impossible to fail a law exam. I am a CA and an LLB.
Okay.
I hold both the degrees. So
Very
you
nice.
addressed me in both the counts. You addressed me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Friends, what I will do is I will now open it up for Q&A. As you all know, our the model that we are following is Srinivas ji would be moderating this particular Q&A session. Kindly send your questions to Srinivas ji. I've just opened the chat room again. Kindly send your questions directed to Srini ji. Srinivas ji, you can start your window, your video, please.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah. Okay. So kindly direct your question to Srinivas ji, and he would consolidate, and then he would ask on your behalf, because we don't want duplication and multiple time losses and all. So Srinivas ji has been helping us do this wonderful job. Professor Vaidyanathan ji, Srinivas is the son of Sri V. Ramarao ji, a senior BJP leader, former, who was a Sikkim governor also. So Srinivas
Namaskar. Namaskar. Okay.
Namaskar, sir.
Very nice.
So he's our state committee member.
Yeah.
And so he would be moderating it.
Ramarao ji was very well known actually. So
yeah.
Very good.
So before he starts his Q&A session, I would ask Professor ji a few questions, and then meanwhile I'd request all the audience to direct your questions to Srinivas ji. While it is happening, Professor ji, I have a few questions. One is, there are so many reports which were published by Law Commission and so many other committees on judicial reforms. What has happened to them? Who has to accept it? Government, court? I mean, in spite of so much of suggestions being made, why is it that we have not moved significantly on the judicial reforms?
Partly because I can be very frank with you, the institution thinks that they are doing very well by itself. So when you have that level of quote unquote complacency, then what happens is you are not very enthusiastic about reforming your. What is there to reform? That type of a question, right? That's not a very desirable state of affairs, but unfortunately, that's what is the current position. In spite of all this, you will be surprised to know, for instance, for global cases, we don't have even 250, 300 lawyers. We have hardly a handful who can handle the cases like that of Kane, which is being done in France today. We don't have so many. So we have more or less a lot of these, what one can call the low-level case takers and other thing, number-wise. So, and that is also not a very desirable thing. We also require to have some, eminent, and almost all. That's why almost all the disputes, if you see, are told to settle at Singapore or settle at, what one can call London. Most of the disputes are supposed to be settled at London. There is no, it's a very, almost all the global arbitration committees are present is practically nil. So once you begin to think that, there is nothing to reform in you, then it's very difficult to, you can produce reports and other things. It's not a very, there is no, what one can call, it's like political leaders in many states, probity in public life is not there, because they think that they can do anything and get away with it. That type of a thing. Not a desirable state of affairs, definitely.
Okay, and the second one I wanted to ask is, I think a major chunk of the cases that you spoke about, the statistics that you gave us, probably are because of intergovernmental disputes.
Yeah,
Maybe
40% at least will be due to the government. Actually, it's not
yeah.
required to go there at all to start with. But like it's a very complex thing. Many people say that there are cases. I didn't want to go on and on, where to recover a 10,000 rupees, they have spent a couple of lakhs actually. And when you ask the person, he will say, no, this is on principle. This is something which we should, because this will set a precedent. This is something very important in government. Precedent is very, very critical. If the group of secretaries are meeting, one secretary suddenly croaks and dies, the first question asked is, what is the precedent? Earlier, was there any meeting in like that in which a secretary died, and what was done to him? Was he, because once he dies, he is no more secretary. So what type of arrangement can be made? Should could we call the government car, or should we call a private taxi? Or so precedent they will look at, and very difficult to get. So these are too many of these are cases are totally uncalled for, actually, if you ask me. So those can be completely, they can be cleaned up. It's not very difficult or anything. There is a will, there is a, but for that, fundamentally the court should recognize that they require reform. That's the first point, right? And because they are refusing to accept the government reform also. See, Narasimha Rao came and he did a lot of reform on the bureaucracy and the licensing, and he could do that because the other recipients cannot have any other alternative other than accepting it. But in the case of judiciary, it's very tough, because you cannot reform them unless they themselves agree to be reformed. So this is a very tight situation.
So, but then, as you suggested, most of the cases run because of precedents, and but whereas in Ram Janmabhoomi case, the judgment says this judgment should not be quoted as a precedent for future cases.
No, that is the judiciary. I am talking. The president is most important in the government among civil servants. Judiciary, has got their own thing. They can say it should not be president, and tomorrow they can also say this will be a president. So it's a very judiciary is a very complicated animal, actually, to put it very nicely.
Okay. Another question I wanted to ask you is, how do we handle this cost aspect in litigation? Now, as we go up the judiciary level, from district level to high court to Supreme Court, getting justice becomes extremely expensive, with lawyers charging by the minute, and a common man sitting in Tindivanam, he won't be able to go to Supreme Court to get his case adjudicated if he has a problem at, let's say, Chennai High Court. I mean, at every stage the cost is going up. What can be done to make law, justice accessible to a common man at an affordable price? Do you have any suggestions to that?
It's a very interesting question, but very, very difficult. All over the world, this problem is there. The ability of the richer people to access to higher levels of judiciary is always there, actually. The man in Dindivanam, I am not being very cynical, but better he visits a local temple and then goes on every Friday and then prays, right? That's only. Otherwise, the local level, it should be sorted out. That's all. According to me, there is no need for substantial number of these cases to go up to Supreme Court also. It's not required, actually. And if you ask me, one of the other reform which I did not stress on, Supreme Court should be primarily a constitutional court. It shouldn't involve itself in any other. And there should also be specialization in the Supreme Court, according to me. This is one point I did not mention. As a professor, I feel They all should undergo training. Civil servants are undergoing training today. It's also required for, because once you pass a LLB 30 years before, doesn't mean your learning has stopped. It's required for judges to, for instance, areas of technology, highly complicated, artificial intelligence, blockchains, and similarly areas of finance. Large areas of commercial disputes are not the traditional commercial dispute anymore. People are talking in terms of we bought the swaps and then we did not get the benefit out of it. And so you should know what is a swap. So my point is they should create two major divisions of technology and economics finance, where specialization is should be stressed. One thing. Second is they should undergo training. It can be, of course, if they want to undergo training only in Harvard or Yale or something, it doesn't matter because many of them want to go there, let them to meet their grandchildren, or that's not a negative thing. But they should go. They don't have any training at all after they become judges, high court, or there is some judicial academy, Bhopal, actually, that Madhav Menon he started in his time. So there they meet, but that's not that type of training with even senior IAS officers today are having 3-week and 4-week on specialized topics from various IIMs, IITs, and various and abroad institutions. I think that's something which they should seriously accept. See, once you accept that training and learning, that itself creates some amount of humility that you require to know something more. And this is resisted by the categories of people. This is very, very important. I have been telling about doctors, so many other type of groups also who should get contemporary, because the world is so fast changing, unless you know what is artificial intelligence, how can you give judgment at all on various issues, right? So this is something I.
And things like cryptocurrency and artificial intelligence are going to come, and how are they going to adjudicate if they don't see a paper filed in the court? I mean, it's going to be disastrous. I think what you suggested.
Very, very complicated thing.
Yeah. And I'll ask a last question before I pass it on to Srini. I mean, we are not a country which was born in 1947. We are a civilization. We have had so much of civilizational experience in terms of running our courts, judiciary, evidence, law of evidence. But today what we see is just nothing but the Indian Constitution of 1935, which the British gave, and then we kept on adding some rubber, band-aids here and there. The core has not changed from what it is in 1935. So what do you think, in your view, or maybe a few things which our judicial system is missing, which traditionally we had it in our civilization, which we don't see today?
I agree with you. Actually, most of the thing is basically it is an adversary type of a judiciary system itself is adversary, and there are local levels, many places things are getting sorted out. Some of you might have heard about a place in Karnataka where this is where the temple in charge, temple head actually, he comes and people from both the parties, mostly land disputes, property dispute, and then husband not taking care, and all these type of disputes go to him actually, and sort of, and he gives what you may loosely call, he patiently listens to both the parties and finally gives his judgment. It is accepted. It's not something which is crossed. It's going on for ages. It's not. It's unfortunately it is treated as counterintuitive, which is not true. It's our. So there are many places in India this type of thing is taking place, but unfortunately we are not giving adequate amount of importance or recognition. What I want to say is there are a lot of cases which can be sorted out outside the court. It's not required for it to be dealt only by the court process. So court process is we trust as if it's something, it's not necessarily. So the many places it is considered as so. This is it's a place is Dharmasala, and some of you would have heard about it. Virendra Hegde. I didn't. So what he told in Karnataka, many other places also. I think we should encourage alternate dispute redressal mechanism using our traditional methods and systems, belief of God, belief of faith, and other things. Nothing wrong about it. As long as the parties involved are comfortable or agreeing another thing. I agree with you, but now that these are all frowned upon. We initially independently, some years before we had this concept of this sorting out some of the judicial system, but somebody raised an objection that the caste plays a role and this plays a role and that plays a role and so that has not been encouraged. So that's a very sad state of affairs. Just 1 second. Right.
Okay. I think Srinivasji, please take over from here. Yeah. I see a lot of you actually sending questions in the general chat. Kindly direct it to Srinivasji because we are not monitoring the questions at general chat level. I request you to kindly direct it to Srinivasji so that he is moderating and is consolidating it. Srinivasji, please take over. Maybe let's keep it short, maybe 15 minutes maximum. Let us close it. So Srinivasji, if you can pick up, either consolidated ones or at least something which are most important of the questions that have been asked.
So thank you, Giridharji. First of all, Vanakkam Vaidyanathanji. Thank you for
thank you. Thanks a lot
for your kind words on my father Ramaraji. Giridharji, you have given me a very tough job. There are, as you can see in the general chat and also on my chat, there are too many questions. So I request Vaidyanathanji to be a little more patient and spend some more time with us.
Yeah. And if there are some duplication, you try to sort of collate them, combine them. That's all.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So the first question comes out of my own experience in Sikkim when my father was there. We observed a lot of village, systems, community level justice systems, which seem to be working very, very well for those communities. And later we came to, hear a lot about Khap Panchayats. What's your opinion on decentralization of justice? Why should we go to the courts in the first place?
That's what we were discussing actually. I gave an example of local level, Virendra Hegde, who is doing an excellent job in Karnataka. Like that, there are many other places also. Some of them could be, sort of tricky or, not, but on an average, we have to see all these things. Just because one or two cases you find that charlatans are running, that doesn't mean. I think we should encourage actually, because overall our people of our country are more God-fearing than law-fearing. Let's be very, very clear about it. And that should be the basis on which we should build it actually. Instead
so
of
how do we bring?
We should build it on that basis. In terms of encouraging these local level settlements and other things, we should recognize it.
How do we make it part of the system now?
Huh?
How do we make it part of the system?
Part of the system should say that if the dispute is settled in this fashion, that is also recognized. That's all. There is no I can't settle it there and then again go to High Court or that type of a thing. That is what I want to say. That many of that's how it should be actually. Social recognition is more important than any other judges' recognition or anything. And much of the cases in these places, if you see, most of the cases will be related to land dispute, related to some family problem, quarrels and other thing, husband not taking care of the thing, or the cruelty of the in-laws or the other way. All these, it's not something which is complicated. The local leaders who are recognized, who are balanced, can understand all these things, and that can be easily sorted out, I would say.
So a major chunk of the questions we have received is on the challenges the government is facing in bringing out these judicial reforms, especially the NJAC and the experience. How do we make that happen? How does any government, take it forward?
Very difficult. You see, that's what I'm telling. As long as the judiciary feel that they are Swayambhu, and no, it cannot be touched. It's extremely difficult to reform something which the the people who are involved in that should finally recognize that there is a need for reform. This is very, very important. So High Court judges or Supreme Court judges and various type of law, they all should realize that because all reform can come from within only. It cannot be imposed from outside. To some extent, it can be imposed if it is not judicial, because judiciary is very difficult to impose anything on them, because they will immediately jump and they are very sensitive creatures. That is another thing. And the third is one should use the word, they are extraordinarily egoistic. They somehow feel they are know all, in the sense they are the ones who are keeping the what one can call the constitutional morality was used recently. I was very amused actually, because normally I thought these two don't go together anyhow. So this is the type of thing. So it's a government, I don't think will succeed in terms of imposing anything. They have to realize, and as their credibility get more and more eroded, I am sure sooner or later they will also come to know that they are they are not what they think they are actually.
So another interesting question we have is, a lot of brilliant lawyers are refusing to become judges purely for monetary considerations. So how do we bring brilliant people into judiciary?
Very, very difficult, because as I told you, the composition of the younger student is totally different. That from there onwards, and then you have select type of lawyers who are extremely brilliant, and many of them they want to go into corporate jobs first of all, and those who are practicing, they earn quite a lot, and becoming a judge is not a at the end of it they will conduct a farewell for you and give you a bouquet and other. So that's all. The whereas if you practice, you can make millions. So there is a it's a very difficult to compel. It's like the same old argument for the last 20 years, how to retain the brilliant people within the country. The brilliant people are all gone and also continuously going, right, from outside in order to occupy great positions and other things. It's a very tough thing.
So another interesting question, sir. How do we move away from law colleges, and can we make it something like a CA exam and people, become lawyers outside law colleges?
It's not these are something what I call the motherhood and apple pie type of situation. See, today law colleges all over the country are infested with enthusiastic future leaders of various regional political parties and everything. It is not, I shouldn't use the word, it's not teaching law or anything. The law is only a subsidiary activity. And some law colleges, I'm given to understand the hostels are occupied by fellows who have, who should not be staying there at all, who are 40, 45 years and other thing, illegally. So it's bringing some amount of order into the law is it's one of the most unlawful type of activities are in many of the law colleges. One shouldn't even talk about it actually. It's a very good thought about that gentleman who mentioned that. More than
I'm
that,
sorry, I'm unable to take names because there are just too many questions and too many names to jot down. I don't want to waste the public time in this, but I did note some of these names. Unfortunately, I don't want to miss out any names. So another set of interesting questions are coming from the viewpoint that how to make justice affordable. Why should it be expensive? How should we make litigations expensive for poor litigants or malicious litigants?
How do we make the concept of poor litigant itself is oxymoron. If you are poor, don't become a litigant. Okay, according to me, you better settle it in your own way. It's a very serious thing actually. Going into a court and other thing is a phenomenally expensive thing. And plus bribery, it's not something which is unknown, or I'm not talking about something which is, I'm not talking about the bribery of the judiciary. Bribery at all levels, lower levels, your file should be pushed, or your thing should be typed earlier, And after the judgment is delivered, you should get your judgment documented and then provided to you. Everywhere there is a complication. So the concept of poor litigant is, I'm very sorry to say, it's not worth it actually. I tell you, you spend more on the lawyers, you spend more on the commuting. I recall one person from far deep inside Tamil Nadu. Every day he has been more or less coming to the court in Madras city. And sometime he hires the local, some, not a posh hotel or something, some of the small type of places. He and his wife, it's some land dispute. He has been thrown out of it by his own children, and it goes on. One feels like weeping only actually. He says and he trusts his lawyer. Hey, sir, and many of these fellows are so innocent. I know actually, very sad actually. They do not know the intricacies of the law and other. And one black coat fellow moves here and there, and every day he collects from them some 200 rupees, 300 rupees, like that. See, it's a very pathetic type of a thing, actually, if you ask me honestly. So the concept of poor litigant is doesn't appeal to me at all. You have to be either poor or you have to be a litigant. Very simple.
So a set of questions are also coming from the point that, as you rightly said, there seems to be corruption in various levels of judiciary. There seems to be lack of interest in being accountable. There seems to be no interest in transparency, and they're obviously not open to a government interfering in judicious appointments or NJC. Now, can we really expect Supreme Court itself to initiate some kind of judicial reforms, or can we ever expect it to happen from
be
within the
very
institution?
delighted. I would be the first person to raise my hand. I would be extremely delighted if Supreme Court think in terms of judicial reform. It's extremely important, and but I'm not very confident given the nature of their judgments and given the nature of their activities. And that's the best way to deal with the judicial reform is themselves to say that we require to be reformed. This is something which is very, very important and critical. I would be very happy if the judges, not reform in terms of 5 judges came to the road and told that, that allocation of duties was not appropriate, and that sort of mudslinging between the judges. I'm not talking about. I'm more interested in the conceptually judges facing that and accepting that there is a crisis in the system. So that's the first step. They have to realize there is a massive crisis across the board. I told you the millions of cases which are how long, 30 years. 30 years is not a joke in a man's life here. If you start at 20, you end up in 50. It's a very, very unbelievable. I'm for it. Supreme Court, I wish somebody tells them, their grandchildren at least should tell grandpa, why don't we some reform? I will be very happy. I would like to bribe some of those grandchildren of these senior judges so that when they talk to the grandpa in a very innocent language, they should tell. Okay.
And some of those people may be in the law schools to become lawyers and then judges and then Supreme Court Chief Justice also tomorrow.
Yeah.
So another set of questions, sir, is coming from things like, how do we prevent judicial overreach or judicial interference? As you rightly said, they don't have expertise. So how do we address that? Apart from training as we have today, how do we avoid judges and judiciary becoming a pawn in the hands of social media or public interest? I'll just give you one example, sir. I'll just give one personal example. I'm sorry to interrupt you. In a very big case against a state government in Telangana, we personally approached a Supreme Court, very popular lawyer in Supreme Court. And it's a very strong case that we think we had, or we thought we had. And the lawyer said, you have to make sure you make a lot of noise on the road, on the grounds, and make sure it gets into the papers. Then we said, what if we don't have the capacity to do that? Does it mean our law, in the eyes of law, we don't have a case? He said, no, but that makes a lot of difference in the courts.
100% I am with that. See, judicial overreach, recently we saw in Sabarimala case, what happened? If you ask me honestly, it's a judicial, not overreach. Uncalled for actually. But finally, what happened? Millions of women were on the roads. telling that we are against the Supreme Court judgment. You know that. I'm sure they would have seen in the television, they would have seen in the newspaper and other things, right? So they didn't have choice actually. They have put it into what I will loosely call a deep freeze. I don't think it will ever once more will come up or anything. It's supposed to be re-looked at. No, making noise is very important. I will tell you another example. I remember this. Of course, government is still to announce that this Ram Setu is to be declared as a thing, and the dredging was going on by the company. Dr. Swami actually, if I remember, took it. It's a big case. And the judges asked, what is this? Are you going to go there and stand and do the puja every day? Or he told, I do Surya Puja every day. I don't go into the sun and stand there. Anyhow, but more important is Ashok Sengal and so many others gathered a huge number of people in Delhi in that Ramlila Maidan and other thing, and then shouted slogans. And so, to some extent, I won't say to a large extent, some extent, what these type of things also help in terms of the judiciary recognizing that there is a large number of people having this type of views and other things. I am not telling in terms of indulging in violence or anything, at least expressing the views. That is something which is, I would say another important thing is judiciary should open itself to social media. They should read what is being written about them. I'm very sad actually, but anyhow, hopefully some regulatory framework will come for social media so that some of the abusive and obscene comments, but otherwise they should read. I don't know how many of them still have the reading habit, but they should find out what the public is thinking about you. It's not something you are in. Times have phenomenally changed compared to the 20s and 30s where you are in a cocoon. You live a separate type of a life and you don't even have any interaction with the ordinary people and everything. But today your judgments are being debated. Your judgments are being taken seriously, and then now, of course, we have regular, this bar and bench. There is one type of write-up comes, and then there is another thing. If I remember, law and justice or whatever. All these are available in the public domain, and sometimes we find continuously, as and when the case is going on, it comes in the WhatsApp or in the Twitter and other things. So the judges, I think, should become more sensitive to how the public is reacting to, and why should they take up at all some cases. This is something I think, forget about entertaining it. Even at the initial, they can just throw it out. It's not our cup of tea type. I think Supreme Court should seriously decide itself to be a constitutional court. I think very, very clear, and then leave the other thing. Perhaps if they want, they can have one more sub-court created or something. They have power. They don't. I agree with that totally.
Yeah, but
So,
the flip side of it, Supreme Court interfered in the oxygen allocation and threatened government with contempt of court for not giving 900 metric tons to Delhi government.
That's
And
what
it turned out to be 5x or 6x.
See, this what is slowly happening, Mamadi Garu. This is what is concern and worry for me is courts are taking over the executive function. Executives are not enthusiastic about it, but they are not able to do anything about it. Slowly, courts are taking over. I told you, this fixing SSL marks and +2 marks, is that the job of a Supreme Court judges or what? There are some, I am sure, educational experts available, principals of colleges, schools available, people who have work experience 40 years, 50 years in this field are there. Then the CBSE board is there, ICSE, all these fellows, and suddenly, and another habit I find fascinating is everybody goes directly to Supreme Court. I do not know this another thing. It should go to the respective. Sometimes Supreme Court says you take it to the lower court, then you come here. And you do not know when they will tell this and when they will tell that. This is something Supreme Court getting into executive decision is dangerous because they don't have any instrumentality to implement anything they say. Recently, one Karnataka court judge shouted telling XYZ should be arrested. He cannot do that at all. He can't ask a Tanedar, you go and arrest somebody. He doesn't have any powers. He can't even ask his own, what one can call Dabaldar or whoever comes with him in the car to do that. He can maximum ask him to go and get a cup of tea for him. That's all. No, I'm telling very seriously, courts do not have any instrumentality to execute what they are talking about. This is something which they should realize. Only executive has got instrumentality to execute. Courts can give their, what one can call opinions or whatever it is. Right? And then sometimes they tell very drastic things, but that doesn't come in their judgment at all. This I call in terms of TRP gathering by the court judges. They want to be in the headlines. It's a very sad state of affair actually. Not
so on the related thing, judges today, they are recusing themselves from things that they are supposed to be judging. Is that a good trend? And how are people accountable at all?
No, I agree with that. They are not accountable to anyone. That's what their claim is. We are accountable to ourselves. I hope they will agree that they are accountable to God at least. If they believe in God, God knows.
So, couple of important points.
Srinivas, can we close it up in like the next 3-4 minutes? I think we are.
Yeah. So we just have about three more questions and we'll close it. Is it okay?
One thing, sir, very important. I want to tell any institution or a group of people who feel that they are not accountable to anyone will meet their demise. This is something. Every institution should be made accountable. Whether it is Reserve Bank of India, whether it is Security Board of it, all are elected people are accountable. Once in they can be thrown out. That's one plus point actually. People ask, is the cabinet, everyone is accountable because for the simple reason you have the power to change them, throw them. But these fixed elements should be able to be, RBI can't say we are not accountable to anyone. No way. So I have a feeling we should cultivate a very, very healthy habit of appraising these institutions once in 5 years or something. The sooner we do it, better. It can be done by retired judges. It can be done by external experts also. Nothing wrong about it. It's not a fault finding or anything. So if once you say that we are not BCCI used to at one point of time say we are not accountable to anyone. And then later you know what all happened and other things, right? How can you say we are not, this is totally unacceptable according to me.
So an important point, sir, is there a role for jury services like in other countries in India?
Huh?
Jury services. No,
jury service can be attempted at lower levels at least. I think we should do that. At the, sessions court level or that is equivalent to what you were telling in Sikkim or other parts of the country. The local people, they are having their own local jury service actually. It's not a legally appointed or anything, but they do actually. And then lot of disputes are settled much, much easier actually in that process. For instance, somebody asked me about Kaveri dispute long time before. I told collectors, former leaders from Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, put them into your room, lock it up. And don't allow any political leader inside. I'm telling you, if you, within 2 days, you will get a solution. You mean it is impossible to solve or not? No. Because each one of them understand, each one of them know about the problems of others. A farmer knows the problem of other, a Mandya farmer knows about the problem of a Tanjore farmer, vis-a-vis that of the Andhra Pradesh. So there is nothing. So once you begin to make it into vote getting devices, then all the complications come. So jury system is already prevalent, but it can be strengthened, I would say. Definitely. At lower level, much of the cases can be sorted out.
So I'll club a couple of questions together. So I'll just state the questions though. Retired judges, so things like retired judges getting into arbitration and working against the public interest, they seem to be, rising of late. Then, how do we make judicial reforms extensive and uh, include the regular criminal investigation systems or police or other administrative wings to make sure justice includes all of these components. So essentially what we're talking about is including role of technology like artificial intelligence. How do we replace all of these elements? So broadly put, who should define the standards of justice in India, and how to include all these components, including reforms, including periodic reforms and review, and including all the components, including technology and training and other
See,
components. How do we get this?
once the technology comes into being, according to me, many things will fall in place. If you have traveled in a train before 1992, you will know what I am telling. Before getting into a train, you have to meet that man at the black coat called a TTE. Unless you pay your respect to him, you are not going to get in anywhere. Everybody knows. In those days, general managers of railways used to tell me that the cabinet minister of railways at Delhi used to tell who should be a TTE in which station. Central Madras, you put him, Hyderabad, you put him, Sialda, you put him, like that. Everybody knows why, right? So, because they were perceived as ATM and other all-time money jobs. Today, you think anybody is interested? Today, automatically, your position comes, you could be RAC, later on, you could be upgraded, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to. So, technology has completely removed significantly the level of bribery and corruption in railways at the customer level. I am not talking about commodity movement and other things. That's a separate issue. They are attempting their own. Similarly, passport. If you are trying to get a passport in the 90s, you know what I am talking about. It was such a agonizing type of a process, and always you have to go through a middleman. There is absolutely no other way. He will organize, and you have to pay him. Today, it's so much streamlined. Some time is given to you. You go there, and then a photo is clicked, and then matter is closed. You get and then it is sent by post to you. And in one of my friends' case, next day it came. He finished the work on a Wednesday or something. Thursday it was at his home. So what I am telling you, technology will alter the way in which our judicial system functions. You must include it, including from the time of filing of the case to the time of giving the token numbers to the muster, and then when it is called another thing, and then the judgments, and it's going to, for instance, today there is a software available in terms of going through the past cases and other things. A lot of this software has come into the market in US. It will make huge number of lawyers unemployed actually, because this software will provide you the critical inputs in order to argue. It's not required for people to pour through that overnight. So whoever has asked that question has correctly identified. Technology is going to be there, and there will be resistance. Obviously, there will be like when you introduce it in other areas, there was so banking, so many areas there was so much resistance for, but that will help quite a lot. I think some members in the judiciary themselves are realizing it, that this is going to be very helpful. I'm very
One final question, sir. Personal beliefs and ideologies creeping into either selection or rejection of judges or in judicial positions. What's your thought on that?
That is always there, sir. I told you, V.R. Krishna Iyer was selected. Nobody objected to it. He was considered as a Dion, but he was in the Marxist Ministry of Namboodiripad. I can go on telling so many judges who are explicitly communist party sympathizers or members are made judges over a long period of time. So now the current government would like to introduce what are called some saffron. I don't think per se it's very, you can eliminate it. But the point is, in taking up cases and giving judgment, how much they are influenced by that earlier predilections or something. That's the most important thing. And obviously, when it comes to some decisions pertaining to constitutional or in terms of the what they have generated another interesting thing, basic structure of the constitution. Anyhow, that's a separate debate we have to have. But it's very difficult to eliminate it, I am telling. Yes, things. In the US, Republican and Democrat openly, pride that he is our. But one thing, a study has established, quite a few studies have established, the president choose a particular person till thinking he is going to be conservative or whatever. But finally, if you analyze their judgment, none of them have benefited the presidents of those times. It's actually, they have done the opposite. Sometimes it happens also. And this more in terms of, what you call, you occupy a position and you would like to prove that, you are not what you thought others you are. You would like to, nobody thought TN Session is going to be such a session in the, this planning commission. Sorry, election commission. Till then, he was known as one of those, bureaucrat who was very good and, but suddenly he became a totally what one can call, you can't call him at all as a pliable or whoever has appointed him would have ruled their, ruled their life. I don't want to name the people, but so this also happens. It's very difficult to completely eliminate what one can call this type of a political in a setup like ours, democratic setup like ours. If I were the PM, I would like the court to have a good number of judges who who are inclined towards my point of view or I would, but actually are they going to be or not is something totally different.
Sir, thank you so much. I have many questions that apologies to all the people who sent me questions. Apologies that I cannot ask anymore because of time constraints. But thanks to you for patiently answering all these questions, sir. Very nice of you, very kind of you for sharing your time with us.
So thank you very much.
Giridharji.
I should thank Bamdi.
We will just hand over to Yagnarayan ji for a formal vote of thanks. But then I think Sirish ji has come and joined in, I think. Our president of Pragya Bharati Telangana, Sirish Jopeshwar.
Oh, very nice. Very good.
So maybe you can take a minute or two, Sirish ji. We'll
yes.
it up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Namaskar, Vaidyanathan ji.
Namaskar. How are things?
I am really very happy. I have listened to your videos on YouTube earlier.
Very good.
I think it was with Jaipur Dialogue or with somebody else.
Yeah.
Today, I am doubly happy because one, you have explained the entire situation. Why there is a crying need? Entire, right from their behavior to their, overreaching attitude. And what I don't have a question. I just want to thank you not only for your time, but for blasting them. Because your brutal comments about their insensitivity, their swayambhu, they are thinking they are not, they are accustomed to being called my Lord. They are thinking they are above the Lord. They can simply say in the court, we will hang you during the Delhi COVID-2 phase.
Yeah.
I think even if we ask them, my Lord, do you really have right to hang anybody? If you have, show the guts. But you have not left any, what would say? You're not believing in soft punches. You have
smart. One thing, Shiriji, I wrote an email to the court judge at Delhi. It's very difficult to hang a person today. You don't get a fellow who hangs. There is only one fellow who is sort of very old and retired.
No, but that doesn't matter, sir. In fact, I am happy because you have been so blunt in your remarks and very apt, because whatever you have said, everybody in our heart feels that there is a crying need, but we really don't know who will bell the cat. And I think I'm not asking a question, but I think if people like you and us knowing these facts, even if we start speaking our mind in matter of a year, if there are 10,000, 50,000 people talking about the insensitive nature, unaccountability, the TRP type pronouncement they are making just to get into the news. As you rightly said, it is not forming part of the judgment. But I will hang you. What kind of nonsense is that? So if we start calling this as nonsense, I think it would be a beginning to, maybe some kind of reform underway, whoever does it. But people's opinion, voice, I am happy you have been so blunt, and I would like to thank you for your not only time, but explaining the subject and giving your frank views on that. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, now I request Yajnaran ji to propose a formal vote of thanks. Yajnaran ji is a member of our Pragya Bharati Telangana team.
Yeah.
I'm Yajnaran, sir. Bhavaya Namaha. Law, judiciary, grievance, redressal, punishment are not new to our Bharatvarsha. Centuries, thousands of years old in India. Ramarajya, law, set up law. Then came Chanakya. Then King Rajas, Maharajas, they have also made some laws. And ultimately, British took the content from that and made a law suitable for our Bharatvarsha and to rule the country also for their admission also. So, what is the expiry date for a law? What is the expiry period? It changes with time, technology, and everything. And now time has come. We have to rethink it, redo it, and amend the law depending on the circumstances, depending on the progress, depending on the humanity. Now, Dr. Vaidyanathan ji is already having a doctor and also Vaidya who is recommending remedy for the ailing judiciary and how to make it perfect and healthy. And I thank him very much. And I think I met you in Gnana Sangamam, Chennai. So, as our president has put it, he is very blunt. Yes, the lawyer, judge must be blunt, he must be brave, bold, and confident on what he knows. And I thank him very much. And I thank Girdharji for arranging such a grand program, even though I missed a few minutes earlier. And I thank all the participants, the judiciary from judiciary, and layman like me, who is not a lawyer. And I thank all. And good night. Santi.
Namaskar. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
And
much.
we hope to have you back again on other topics with regard to corruption, cryptocurrency sometime.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Vaidyanathan ji.
Thank you.